If you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to Leviticus chapter 11. Leviticus chapter 11. I actually turned to 9. We're going to spend a moment in 9 before we jump into 11. As you start turning there, I want to say for a moment thank you to Jonas for providing the space for us just to rest for a moment. In America, it's a badge of honor to be busy. You ask somebody, what you been up to? Oh, it's really busy. Yeah, me too. I was a teenager at one point, many, many years ago, like yesterday, something like that. And we had a thing called quiet time. How many of you grew up in quiet time culture? We need to reclaim some of that. We need to get back to some quiet time where we cut off the devices, get the lights turned low, and just spend time in the presence of God, reading His Word, praying. I was in Belize this last week, and there was a moment. We were in kind of a transition period, and I was sitting out on the patio in the middle of this jungle, and I was studying for this sermon, and I just felt like God said, bow. So in the middle of the jungle, I just laid on my face, and just the wind was blowing and the trees were rustling, the birds and all the things, and it was just like God said, this is holy. You're mine and worship me. So I'm wanting us to feel that weight that God has set you apart. This world isn't just about busyness. It's not just about work. It's not just about 401ks and homes and cars and sports and all the things that we consume our time with. It's about the holiness of God. And as we study through Leviticus, that's actually what we're supposed to be seeing. That your life is meant for something so much more than just busyness. Now, don't get me wrong, work is a good gift of God. God has created us for work. Adam and Eve in the garden were commanded to work. And so there's a really healthy need for us to be about the work of the Lord. We just need to make sure that our lives are prioritized according to the standards of God and not according to the standards of this world. And so I want to show you something as we get into this text that's really related to this idea of just resting in the presence of God and saying, God, what do you want from my life? And then living that out for His glory. And so I want to show you this movement in the text. If you've been with us from the beginning of Leviticus, there's these 5 offerings, and they give these sacrifices, and these offerings represent different kinds of attitudes towards our relationship with God. And all of them are really centered around this idea of surrender and then being in relationship with God, where the pinnacle of the offerings is peace, this complete wholeness of life that allows us to have relationship with God around a table. It's a picture of a meal with God where we get to just sit and have fellowship, and that is the beauty of what God is calling us into. But we get distracted by a lot of things, and we end up losing that relationship along the way. And so this morning, I want to show you a pattern that if you're not careful, you'd miss in Leviticus, but it sets up what we're about to go into in 11 through 13. So look at Leviticus chapter 9, verse 6. Leviticus chapter 9, verse 6. Here's what it says. And Moses said, this is the thing that the Lord, and then I want you to read it out loud. What did the Lord do? He commanded you. This is the thing that the Lord commanded you to do, that in order that the glory of the Lord may appear to you. This is what you're created for, by the way. We are created for the glory of the Lord. And if you're in discipleship, and I hope you are, one of the verses you memorized this summer is Revelation 1:8. God says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, declares the Lord, who is, who was, and who is to come, the Almighty. Our life is meant for Him. All things are from Him and for Him and through Him, and everything has their being in Him. And here we see that we can experience the glory of the Lord when we obey His what? His commands. We can experience the glory of the Lord when we obey his commands. Don't miss that. God commanded the people of Israel. Now go down in chapter 9 to verse 23. Chapter 9, verse 23. It says, "And Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, and when they came out, they blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people." So you see, God commanded, and he said, if you'll do what I command, the glory of the Lord will show up. Then we get to the end of the chapter here in chapter 9. They did what they were commanded to do, and what happened? The glory of the Lord showed up, just like he said he would. And when he shows up, look what happens, verse 24. Fire came out from before the Lord, consumed the burnt offering and the pieces of fat on the altar. And when all the people saw it, what'd they do? They shouted and fell on their face. This worship service broke out. So the Lord commanded. I'm sorry. Can you give me some water, Jonas? The Lord commanded. The Lord consumed what he had commanded. And then what happens as a result of this? God is glorified, and the people shout and worship. They bow down, they fall on their face, and they give God all the glory. That's the pattern. Now, that should have been the high point of the book of Leviticus. It should have been the defining moment of what it looks like to be in relationship with God. Thank you. Sorry, I'm still recovering from Belize. Now go to chapter 10. Chapter 10. Look at this pattern. Now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and offered unauthorized fire before the Lord. Now, read carefully. Which he had what? Not commanded them. You see the pattern? God says, I command you to do this. If you do what I command you, I'll consume it. When I consume it, my glory will come from it, and the end result of it will be worship. You see it? Here, these guys come in. They do what the Lord had not commanded. Let's see what happens. And fire came out from before the Lord. Same thing that happened in verse 24 of chapter 9. See it? Look at verse 24 of chapter 9. Fire came out. I'm sorry, guys. Fire came out from before the Lord. Same words. Same language. Are you seeing it? Like, I need you to confirm with me that you're seeing it. I'm not making this up, right? Okay, there's a pattern that the author of Leviticus, Moses, is very clear to try to get you to see. Fire came out from before the Lord after they had done what they did not command. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I love y'all. Y'all are the most amazing people on the planet. I'm serious. If I could open it. Here we go. So fire comes out from before the Lord when they did what they were commanded, and when they did what they weren't commanded to do. Now, look what happens, verse 2. Fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. And then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord has said. Among those who are near me, I will be sanctified." And look at what he says. And before all the people, I will be what? Glorified. And Aaron held his peace. What Moses is trying to get you to see is these two paths, these two options. You can do what God has commanded you to do. He will come in and he will consume the offering that you've brought him under his commandments. Then glory will show in your life, and worship will be the result. Or You can do what God has not commanded you to do. You will be consumed. You will be a demonstration, not an experience of, but a demonstration of the glory of God. And silence will be the result of that. Do you see the difference? This is a life of command obedience that produces a consumption of everything you have for the glory of God. And the result of that is shouting, is worship, is falling on your face and experiencing God. Or you can run in rebellion. You can do that which is not commanded of you. You will still be consumed. And in the consumption of you, not of your sacrifice, but of you, God is still going to be glorified. You need to understand that. God is a glorious God who will be glorified through your obedience, but he will also be glorified through your disobedience. God is going to be glorified no matter what. I think of Philippians chapter 2, that it says that at the name of Jesus Christ, every knee on earth and in heaven and under the earth will bow before him and declare him as Lord. That includes those who freely bow as worshipers and those who freely bow as consumption, as those who will be consumed by God for eternal fire. This is the two options, and there's these moments here back to back where the same language is being used of command and not command, fire coming and fire coming, glory and glory, shouting and silence. One produces a life of glorified worship, that you get to experience peace in the presence of God, and one is a life of consumption that drives you further and further away from the life that God intended for you. God's going to get glory from your disobedience regardless. And in the end, you're left with silence, not shouting. You're left with sorrow, not worship. There's these two competing pathways. And so what we read starting in chapter 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 are some things that are kind of strange to us. Some things will make sense, and some things won't make sense to us. But I want to show you why chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 are here. Go to chapter 16. Go to chapter 16. So we have Nadab and Abihu being consumed because they didn't do what God commanded them to do. It was supposed to be the highlight when they sacrificed and God showed up and he consumed them and all the people glorified God and they shouted and worshiped and fell on their faces. That was supposed to be the pinnacle of Leviticus. But here we go. Look at chapter 16. And we'll get to chapter 16 in 2 weeks from now. But here it goes, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they drew near before the Lord and died. Okay? The reason I take you there is because what I want you to see is everything that happened from the time in chapter 10 when Nadab and Abihu died, everything that's going to happen in 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 are God's way of saying, here's what it's going to look like for you to be in right standing with me. Okay? I'm going to give you a bunch of commands here, and you're either going to choose to obey the commands of the Lord, or you're going to choose to not obey the commands of the Lord. Do you see the pathways? And so everything that's happening in the chapters we're going to read over the next 2 weeks, it's bookended when we get to chapter 16, which chapter 16 we'll see becomes now the pinnacle of the book of Leviticus. Chapter 16 is the high point in the book of Leviticus, and we'll look at some structural things in another couple weeks. But here's what I want you to see. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they drew near before the Lord and died. So that's what's setting up these moments. You following me? So they died in chapter 10. Then God gives them these commands in chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And then chapter 16 is going to be the resolution of the deaths of Nadab and Abihu. Okay, I want you to see that structure. I hope you can see it. Can you see it? Make sense? Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. One more place before we really dive into our text today. Go to Leviticus chapter 1, verse 2. I got one more thing I want to say in setting up today's text. Leviticus chapter 1, verse 2. It says, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring an offering of livestock from the herd or from the flock." Now, why am I bringing you to Leviticus chapter 1, verse 2? Notice this point. He says, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any one of you," okay, now I want to stop there. When any one of you, does any of you, are you reading out of the New American Standard Bible, the NASB? Anybody got that? Yeah, one person has that? Okay, that's good. All right, a couple of you. Does it say when any one of you in that passage? No. What does it say? Man. It says when any man comes to bring an offering. Now, the reason why I bring that up, there's nothing wrong with this translation, when any one of you. But what I want you to see, and what I think the author intended for us to see, was this this word, when any one of you, that any one of you is actually the word Adam. It's Adam. So if you're reading the Hebrew, it says when any Adam comes to bring an offering. Think about that for a moment. When any Adam, the word Adam, the name for Adam back in Genesis, right? We got Adam and Eve. That word Adam back in Genesis means man or mankind. It is the word for man. And it's also the word for mankind, right? It's for humans, right? And so whenever your Bible translates this, when any one of you, or when any human, basically, brings an offering, but what you should hopefully see is that what's happening here is the word used is Adam. When any Adam comes to bring an offering. And what the picture we have in Leviticus, what we have in the tabernacle, and we've already studied this, the tabernacle, if you were to walk into the tabernacle, it's a beautiful garden-like looking place. The tapestries of the garden have flowers and palm branches and trees and animals. The tabernacle is this moment where you're walking back into the dwelling place of God, what was in Genesis the Garden of Eden. You have this picture. And so the start of the book of Leviticus is when any Adam comes back to the garden. When any Adam comes back to make relationship with God right. When any Adam is ready to enter back into the presence of the Lord. This is the picture. And so what happens is in Leviticus, every time we do what God commands us to do, it's like Adam coming back into the garden. It's Adam getting access back into the presence of God. And then what we see as the opposite of that is anytime we do what God has not commanded us to do, it's Adam reliving the banishment from the garden. It's Adam reliving the disobedience of the original sin. It's all the Adams finding themselves outside of the God's presence. You see it? And so there's this calling on our life. You can live in relationship with God by doing his commandments, or you can live outside of his relationship by not doing what he's commanded us. And so when we get to these laws, these commands in chapters 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, some of them are going to seem strange to us. Some of them are going to seem what's going on here. But the whole point is God has commanded it, and you have a choice. Are you going to obey or are you not going to obey? That's the choice laid before the Israelites. And so let's start going into this. So the first thing I want to say is this. You are set apart for obedience. Every one of us have been set apart for obedience. This is the big calling of God in our life. You have been set apart from all the other people in the world for obedience. You're set apart for obedience. Look at Leviticus chapter 11, verse 47, or verse 44. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 44. It says, "For I am the Lord your God, Consecrate yourself, therefore. That word consecrate is to set apart, to be other than everyone else, to be different than everyone else. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourself, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy. That word holy there is the same idea of being set apart. You are called to something different than what everyone else is called to. Be holy, for I am holy. You shall not defile yourself with any swarming thing that crawls on the ground, for I am the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. And so we have this choice laid before us. We will either be holy like God is holy, or we will run in rebellion and disobedience like the original Adam. We're called to be set apart for obedience. But here's the reality. How are we set apart for obedience? We're actually set apart in obedience. What sets us apart isn't just that we have laws to be set apart. What sets us apart is we are called to live in those things. We're called to be obedient in these things. And so there's this calling on us to live obedient lives before God. And we have a choice to make. Are you going to submit to God and see his glory and be part of the worshipers? Or are you going to disobey the commands of God, be consumed anyways? God will receive glory regardless of your choice, and the outcome will not be worship, it will be silence. And so we're called to be set apart, but we're set apart how? In obedience. And so there's going to be these categories. Look at Leviticus chapter 10, verse 10. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 10. He says, you are to distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean, and you are to teach the people of Israel all the statutes that the Lord has spoken to them by Moses. And so God gives the Levitical priesthood this command. You are to be the ones who instruct others on what it is to be set apart. You're going to distinguish between what is clean and what is unclean, and then you're going to teach them to Israel all the statutes that the Lord has commanded. So this is the calling on the priesthood in Leviticus, but consequently, it's the calling on all of us. We studied that a couple weeks ago. And so I want to set for you real quick a couple of categories that the book of Leviticus uses that are going to be helpful for us as we get through the next several weeks. So you have these two top tier categories. You have what is holy and what is common. There's another word in the book of Leviticus that also is profane. Sometimes when we hear the word profane, we think of like bad. But in Leviticus, that's not what the word means. It just means common. It means not holy, right? And even that's a hard concept for us. Holy means you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're good and everything's right. That's not what that means. Holy means set apart. That there's a special usage for this thing and everything else is common. Does that make sense? And common's not a bad thing, right? Common's not like, oh, you're not living like you're supposed to. You're not on fire for God. No, just common means you're not this set apart, sanctified thing, object, person, place, right? You're living life. Now, what we know is when God steps into the presence of Israel, that his presence himself sets apart the common people of Israel as a holy people. The people of Israel are set apart from all the other nations of the earth. You following that? So God's chosen people are holy in and of themselves because God has entered into their presence and he set them apart. And so you have what's holy and what's common. Now, under what's holy and what's common, we're going to look at two categories in this common area. We'll get into chapters like 17 on, and we're going to look at the difference between holy and common, but for right now, we're really focusing on this common idea. Not what's set apart for the use of God, but what's common. And underneath the common category are two other categories, clean and unclean. Clean and unclean. Now, when we hear clean and unclean, we also in our minds think good and bad. Sinful and holy, right? Those aren't the categories we should be thinking of, though. Common isn't bad. It's just that's who everyone. We start as common. Every one of us, we're just common, right? That's not bad. And then underneath that is clean and unclean. Holy doesn't have a category of clean and unclean. Only common has a category of clean and unclean. Okay? And so let's get into this, if that makes a whole bunch of sense and clear as mud. Here we go. Let's read. I just want to read some things over you. Leviticus chapter 11, starting in verse 1. Leviticus 11, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, these are the living things that you may eat among all the animals that are on the earth. Whatever parts the hoof and is cloven-footed and chews the cud among the animals you may eat. Nevertheless, among those that chew the cud and part the hoof, you shall not eat these. The camel, because it chews the cud but does not part the hoof, is unclean to you. The rock badger, because it chews the cud but does not part the hoof, is unclean to you. The hare, because it chews the cud but does not part the hoof, is unclean to you. The pig, because it parts the hoof and is cloven-footed but does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. You shall not eat any of their flesh, and you are not to touch their carcasses. They are unclean to you." And the church said, amen. Right? We get to this point in our Bible reading plan, and we're like, what in the world is happening? Right? Like, let's go to Leviticus chapter 12. Leviticus chapter 12. Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, if a woman conceives and bears a male child, then she shall be unclean for 7 days. And at the time of her menstruation, she shall be unclean. And on the 8th day, the flesh of her foreskin, or the flesh of the foreskin, where'd I go? Yeah. In the 8th day, the flesh of foreskin shall be circumcised on the male child that she gave birth to. Then she shall continue for 33 days. There's your number, Jonas. For 33 days in the blood of her purifying. She shall not touch anything holy, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying are completed. But if she bears a female child, then she shall be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her menstruation. And she shall continue in the blood of her purifying for 66 days. And when the days of her purifying are completed, whether for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting a lamb a year old for a burnt offering, and a pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering. And he shall offer it before the Lord and make atonement for her. Then she shall be clean for the flow of her blood. This is the law for her who bears a child, either male or female. I read a rabbinical rabbi who was teaching on this passage, and I thought it was really funny. In verse 6, where it says that once her days of purifying are over, and she's going to then bring a sacrifice to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting, a lamb a year old for a burnt offering, but where this commentator was really funny. It says, and a pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering. You see that? And remember, we talked about how a sin offering isn't like for like what we think of sin. It's really the idea of purity, right? Like we have to be pure. We have to be clean again. And so she's going to bring a sin offering, a purity offering. And this rabbi from a long, long time ago said the reason why she's required to bring a sin offering is because in the time of her childbirth, she's so angry at her husband, she'll swear never to have children again. And so because she has sworn never to have children again, she now has to make herself pure again before the Lord for that. Isn't that so great? And there's a lot of fun stuff out there. And I would highly encourage you to spend a lot of time going through those things. But it's interesting here that if she has a male child, she has 7 days of purification, and then there's another 33 days of kind of being set apart where she can't enter into worship. And then if she has a female child, now it's 14 days, and then another 66 days that she can't enter into worship. And so there's this distinction between male and female, whether you have a girl or a boy. I was talking with Matt, one of the guys on the trip to Belize with me, and we were like, why is there a difference between if you have a male child and have a female child? And so I was doing a bunch of reading and just trying to, and there's just so much out there that's fun to read. So I highly encourage you, if you're looking for some entertaining reading, go research that. Why there's a difference between male children and female children. There's just these things in Leviticus that go, what is happening? Why? Let's look at chapter 13. Chapter 13, verse 40. Chapter 13, verse 40. Look at what it says. Some of you in this room are going to feel this one. Not me, but some of you. If a man's hair falls out from his head, he is bald. But, good news, guys, you're bald. What are you? Clean. There you go. There's encouragement for you bald guys. Okay? You're clean. And if a man's hair falls out from his forehead, he has baldness of the forehead. I love that. But even if you have baldness of the forehead, guess what? You're still clean. You're all right. It's okay, right? Some of us unibrow people need the bald forehead kind of thing. But if there is on the bald head or the bald forehead a reddish-white diseased area, it's a leprous disease breaking out on his bald head or on his bald forehead, and then the priest shall examine him. And if the disease swelling is reddish-white on his bald head or on his bald forehead, like the appearance of a leprous disease in the skin of the body, he's a leprous man. He is what? Unclean. And the priest must pronounce him unclean. His disease is on his head. And the leprous person who has the disease shall wear torn clothes and let the hair of his head hang loose. It's funny that his hair of his head's going to hang loose because he's bald, right? And he shall cover his upper lip and cry out, unclean, unclean. He shall remain unclean as long as he has the disease, he is unclean. He shall live alone. His dwelling shall be outside of the camp. What I want you to see as we read some of these things, it kind of makes us scratch our head and go, why? What is happening here? What is the point of these things? Some of these things are so obscure to us, it doesn't make much sense. But what I want you to see is a couple of things. The first thing is this. We're talking about a people 3 million plus strong, wandering around in tents, living in the wilderness. Right? I mean, this is not you have your modern homes, you have your air conditioners, you have your hospitals down the street. These are 3 million plus Israelites living in tents, wandering through the wilderness, and God's got to protect them. God's got to keep them safe from disease, safe from contamination, safe from all kinds of situations that may arise that could destroy the camp. And so God is giving them a lot of these laws as hygiene laws in order to keep them safe from the outbreak of disease. 3 million people wandering around in tents in the middle of the wilderness. That's one reason why this happens. In fact, I would even argue that we existing right now in today's age can uniquely understand this text in a way that maybe we couldn't have not too long ago, right? We're all living post-COVID. And whether you agree with COVID or don't agree with COVID or whatever that politically, I'm not even trying to get into that today. But what I'm saying is we've experienced a world in which you had these social distancing rules. You lived in a world in which you had masking rules, right? The leprous man has to cover himself and say, unclean, unclean, right? You had to declare to your workers, your employers, your government, if you were clean or unclean, right? You had these quarantine mandates where if you had a fever or if you were in contact with someone who had a fever, you were having to quarantine yourself. Again, I'm not trying to make any political commentaries. Don't go there with me. I'm saying we are uniquely situated to understand their world in a way that maybe we weren't before 2020. We've all experienced the hardships of quarantine, the setbacks of being required to wear masks. And I mean, my father died during COVID, and we couldn't even have a funeral for him. Like this separation from society is really hard on people. And we read these clean and unclean laws, and they're meant to remind us that we have this responsibility to obey God. And God doesn't give these things arbitrarily. They're not meant to hurt us or harm us. These laws are meant to protect us. These laws are meant to keep us safe. These ritual purity laws of clean and unclean are meant to help inform who God is and how we're to live in community with each other. And so even when some things like this seem weird to us, they have a purpose, and God has given them for a reason. I think of some things in our own culture, like the 5-second rule, right? If you drop it on the ground and it's not on there 5 seconds, you can still eat it, right? We're a people, especially right now, who are like big Whole Foods crunchy people, right? Like we got to get rid of all the sugars in our house, and like we have all these things in our culture. When I was in Taiwan on a mission trip several years ago, it was really strange to me because those people, this was way before COVID, they wore masks. They're very like germophobic in the Taiwanese culture. And yet, you walk into any bathroom, there's no soap dispensers. There's no paper towels. Literally, here's what you do in Taiwan. You walk into the public bathroom, you do your business, you wash your hands with no soap, just the water, and then you do this. But yet they wear masks, and everything's super germophobic. But that's literally this is what you do. When you go into the bathroom in Taiwan, into like a house bathroom, like to go take a shower, the shower is just part of the bathroom. The whole bathroom's like tiled, and you just get in the shower, and it's spraying everywhere. It's the weirdest thing. But yet they're so like every culture has these things that's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. There's a guy, Tim Mackey, he does the Bible Project, and he's got an illustration I think is pretty great. He says, when you go into a bathroom and you do your business, what are you supposed to do when you're done? You wash your hands, right? Is it acceptable to eat a hamburger in the bathroom? Everyone's like, ew, no, that's gross, right? Why? Why is it unacceptable to eat a hamburger in the bathroom? Because it's unclean in there, right? It's gross in there. And yet, I guarantee you, the vast majority of you keep a toothbrush sitting out on the counter of your bathroom. And every morning when you wake up, you grab that toothbrush, and where does it go? All over the teeth, right? But yet, we won't eat in there. But we stick a thing in our mouth in there every single day and rush everything in it. So to look at people in Leviticus and go, those backwards, uneducated, we all have these laws and these traditions and these rituals that we perform that if we really were to stop and think about some of them, they don't make a whole lot of sense sometimes. But there is good reason why you shouldn't eat a hamburger in the bathroom. I think we can all agree on that, right? And so what we see is we look at these laws and these things and we go, why? Why is this the way that is? Why is this how this is? But here's what we need to understand. God's commanded it. This is the big point. God's commanded it. And I can promise you, whatever thought you have about it, whatever reasoning you might logically deduce behind it, if God's commanded it, I promise it's better than whatever you come up with. And so it's laid before you. I've commanded it, or you cannot obey my commands. I'm going to consume the worship, or I'm going to consume you. It's going to end in my glory, or it's going to end in my glory. But it's going to end in worship, or it's going to end in silence. And you have a choice to make. I think the clearest explanation for this is in Leviticus 20. Look over at Leviticus 20. When some of these laws don't make sense to us and we're a little confused by the heart behind them, I want you to see Leviticus 20 because I think this is the clearest God-given reason why he says what he says. Here we go, Leviticus 20, verse 22. You shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my rules and what does he say? Do them. Remember, you're set apart for obedience, but you're really set apart in your obedience. And he says, you're going to keep all my statutes, you're going to keep all my rules, you're going to do them. Why? That the land where I'm bringing you to live may not vomit you out. Isn't that a beautiful word picture? And you shall not walk in the customs of the nation that I'm driving out before you, for they did all these things, and therefore I detested them. But I have said to you, You shall inherit their land, and I will give it to you to possess, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, who has separated you from the peoples. You shall therefore separate the clean beast from the unclean, and the unclean bird from the clean. You shall not make for yourselves detestable by beast or by bird or anything which the ground crawls, which I have set apart for you to hold unclean. You shall be holy to me, for I am the Lord and am holy, and have separated you from the peoples, that you should be mine. That you should be mine. God says, you're not going to be like everybody else. The things I'm commanding you, some of them are hygiene related, some of them are a protection for you, but a lot of them are just simply going to boil down to this. The world does those things, you're not going to do them. The pagan, Gentile world that's polytheistic and worships all kinds of gods and has all kinds of rituals that lead them straight to death, you're not going to do those things. You're going to be holy for me. You're going to be set apart for me. You're going to be my people. You're not going to look like the rest of the world. And so here's the deal. You have all these food laws. And these food laws, listen, every meal was a reminder to them that they belong to God. Whenever you sit down and you can't eat what everyone else is eating, you have to go out of your way to make your diet conform to these certain principles. That's a reminder that every time you sit down to eat, you belong to God. You are set apart for God. Every time you give birth, every time a woman gave birth to a male or a female child, and there's these laws surrounding the birth process, and there's clean and unclean. Every time you gave birth, it was a reminder that you stood right between death and life. And God holds the power of death and life in his hand. And so as you're giving birth, you worship God. After you give birth, you're consecrating and making yourself pure for a relationship with God again. See, again, with birth, you didn't do anything wrong. It's not that you're unclean because you've sinned or you've done something wrong. Birth is a natural thing. God's commanded us to be fruitful and multiply. That's not the point. The point of these laws isn't because you've done something wrong and now you need to be made holy again. The point is, I need you to focus in every part of your life on me. You're going to do things different than everyone else. You're going to look at the world in a way that the other people of the world don't look at it like. Food is going to be a worship to me. Birth is going to be a worship to me. Even sickness and baldness and all these things. Every time they got sick and they had to go through purity rituals and clean and unclean rituals, every sickness was a reminder that we're not who we're supposed to be. That the world is broken, and without God, we are going to die in our sickness. All of these laws are pointing us back to God, and God says in Leviticus 20, you're going to do what I tell you to do. You're going to keep all my statutes. You're going to keep all my rules, and you're going to do them unless you want the land to which I'm bringing you to vomit you out. See, we have these two choices. Do what God commands. See God come in, worship the glory of God, and get to experience his presence. Or we're going to live in disobedience. We're not going to surrender to the commands of God. We're going to be consumed by God, and he's still going to get glory, but not the way we want. In the end, is not going to be worship. It's going to be separation. These are the options. And if you're in our discipleship groups, you should be memorizing 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. How does this look like in our lives? What does it look like for us, New Testament Christians who live post-Christ and post-cross of Christ? We're not post-Christ, but post-cross of Christ. What does it look like for us? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31. And whatever you do, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, whether it's eating or drinking or giving birth or having sickness. You know, we have a prayer time at 9:30 in the morning, And in my group, we were praying and we were sharing with each other what was going on. And one of the ladies in my group expressed that she has this relative who's dealing with cancer, but even in that, people are seeing Jesus the way she's responding. Even in the sickness, she's being a light and saying, look at how good my God is. Whether you eat or drink or give birth or you have sickness or whatever you do, what should we do? We do it for the glory of God. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it for the glory of God. So here's the reality, church. If you're a Christian, you're set apart in obedience. You have the commands of God. But they're not just good enough if we just know them. We have to live them. We have to be obedient to the commands of God. Now, we'll get into later some differences between what we're commanded to do versus what the Israelites were commanded to do from Leviticus to the New Testament. But what ultimately I need you to see is no matter what you're called to do in this life, you're called to do it for the glory of God. And so you have this option before you today. Obey the command of God and experience his glory that leads to a life of worship. Or you're going to disobey the commands of God. You're not going to do them. The end result is going to be death, and you're not going to experience the worship of God. Those are the two choices before you today. And so I want to invite you in this moment as we wrap up our service for today. There's going to be people up front to pray for you, to receive you. Have you decided today to bow before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and say, I will obey. I will worship. I will do all that you've commanded me to do. I'm telling you right now, there's so much drama, so much junk that we live in, that we experience because of so many people not willing to surrender to Jesus. So many people not willing to live their life according to the design of God. We look at God's commands and we say, those don't make any sense. Those are meant to keep me from experiencing fullness of life. Those are meant to keep me from experiencing fun. And God's saying the opposite's true. If you'll do what I've commanded you to do, you're going to experience my glory, which will lead to a life of worship. And so I'm going to challenge you today, church. I'm going to encourage you today, church. Let's commit as a people to obey the commands of God and see what God does with that. I promise you, it'll help your homes. It'll help your workplaces. It'll help your community. If we will together commit ourselves to obey the commands of the Lord.